if you look at the city itself, it's been and you go back into time about 1850 onwards, it has been an urban modern city. And when it sort of tried to lay claim to that urbanity, that cosmopolitanism, that modernity, all that was happening in a very militant way in terms of, annexing those ideas. And a lot of that was possible, through theater. And just a simple example, you see, 1850, we had about the first textile mill, since you mentioned cotton 56, polyester 84. So that's a play about the entire struggle of the textile mill. And the period 1956 to 1984 is what transpired in Mumbai during that period. So the rise of the communists, the decline of the communists, the rise of the Shiva Sena, the arrival of the mafia, and then the arrival of the militant trade unionism. That was broadly the period. In terms of, again, predating it back to the late, mid 80s, 1850s, two, three things. One is that we had the first textile mill that arrives in 1852, 53. It's also the period of the first spell of modernity, the first university, the JJ School of Arts, what have you. All of that is transpiring. Jyotiba Phule writes Tritiya Ratna. Civil war in the US, and you have the first spate of textile mills simply because there is shortage of cotton. World War One, again, the second phase of textile mills in Mumbai. And both these phases, so from one you jump straight to about 140 to 150 textile mills. And along with the mills, you have two phases of immigrants coming in. One is first from the belt of Konkan, which is where this, the Malvanis and so on come in from. And the second is from hinterland of India. Sorry about this history lecture, but yeah.
I think it's quite valuable both to be reminded and to learn of it for the first time.
Now, two interesting things happen along with this, the mill struggle. One is, of course, the fact that, as I told you, the immigrant population come in, is also the simultaneous rise of politics, which is sort of transpiring in just a very small district of Mumbai, which is the south of Mumbai, which is what we call the red light area. And we have three sort of thumb rules in Bombay that for theatre to thrive, essentially you need an urban transport network, you need a red light area, and you need alcohol next to the theatre. So you have about 45 formidable theatres in that area. 1885, Indian National Congress gets formed in London, but the point is it's not a mass political organization, right? It's basically a bunch of Badraloks who are sitting around and discussing whether this can.
It's an interest group of businessmen.
Turn of the century, how do you make an idea of political ideology mass? So again, it is primarily through theatre that transpires. So these textile mills, what essentially happens is they start getting deployed for performances of plays outside that. There are two phenomena. One is what is happening with the entire Ganpati Mahotsav, which Tilak and so on do. What they realize is that if you can plant an idea over here outside a textile mill, it can multiply. So these workers who are working in these mills, and even on an average, if you're looking at 500 to 1,000 workers per mill, they return to the village. So the whole idea of home rule or political ideology of freedom or equality before law, which was the 20th century, the main sort of issue, that returns to the villages. This is essentially because they realize that unlike what happens in Europe, we are not a print society. And that ideas essentially have to be transmigrated through the verbal. And again, Tilak made this beautiful statement at that time. He says that in this country, everybody knows the Mahabharata because nobody has read it. And that is one way for ideas to multiply, you see. And so he deploys that. Something far more interesting starts transpiring. I'm sorry about this. Something far more interesting starts transpiring 1914, which is when World War I starts, is you essentially have 6 major political formations transpiring in that small pocket of. So you have the Indian National Congress, which has now become a mass organization. You have the arrival of the Hindu Mahasabha and RSS between 1915 to 1925. You have the Communist Party of India. You have Gandhiji coming in from that side. You have Ambedkar arriving in from the other side. The whole question of what is going to be the Indian identity is being defined in that entire segment. And for all these people who say, why should theatre or any of the arts be political? The adhesive which is gluing all this is theatre. It is theatre which is a manifestation of this thing. The Indian National Congress uses theatre essentially for, and the mass cadre base that they have in the villages today is thanks to the work that was put in those days, 1950 to 1920s on. And I can go on and on and on. But this would, I think, be the fundamental backbone of why the arts are so important, because this has been the struggle that we've all, built our entire freedom struggle on, and also this whole thing of independence, civil liberty, and everything else.